Mobile hunters, our buddies over at Tethered are always innovating to keep us more mobile and in the game when it counts. From the Tethered One Sticks, the Fast Pack, to the Ultra Lock Saddle, Tethered is always designing to increase comfort and utility while reducing bulk, weight, and fiddle factor of mobile hunting gear. And now, they've outdone themselves yet again by creating the carbon fiber forged Predator CFX platform, the latest fully featured mobile saddle platform that raises the bar for what's possible in mobile hunting gear. Whether you're new to saddle hunting or an old tree climbing veteran, go to tetherednation.com for all your saddle hunting gear. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today I got on a fella. So it's funny because I think I started following you. I want to say it was probably like 2 years or so ago. And what was kind of crazy was that when I started doing jiu-jitsu and I made like my first jiu-jitsu post or whatever, you were one of the first guys that kind of responded, and it was kind of cool because I wasn't sure how many people who like followed the podcast or whatever were actually jiu-jitsu practitioners. Right. And so I was stoked to see that I had like some guys on there who were already kind of into it that were like, had very similar interests to me. But I'm having my buddy on, Steve Smallridge, hailing from Michigan, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep. St. Clair Shores, Michigan.
Nice. Are you licking your Detroit Lions wounds today?
Well, I'm not a big football guy, but I did actually watch the game last night, and I went to bed. There's like 2 minutes left. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know. From what I've seen about the Lions, it's not uncommon for them to do what they did last night. So
right. So I'm a Steeler fan by like birth and by any other measurement. But I was rooting for Detroit only because they've not had a championship and they're very much similar. Yeah, ever, but they're very similar. I mean, I grew up watching Barry Sanders, and I loved watching Barry Sanders. And to me, if he just would have had the same or even close to the type of, teammates, I guess we'll say, as, Emmitt Smith did, like to me, like Barry Sanders is the best running back I've ever seen in my life. Like, and I'm old enough to have watched the very end of Walter Payton. And I saw all of Sanders, all of Emmitt Smith. That was like, when I was growing up. I never watched Jim Brown play, of course. Earl Campbell, never really watched him play. He was before my time. But even in watching highlights, like Barry Sanders to me was always the best running back that I had ever seen. And so I've always kind of had a soft spot for Detroit. That and Pittsburgh and Detroit they're very similar cities, very like Rust Belt, manufacturing,
Yep.
And so a lot of the same kind of blue collar. So I was feeling for all my Michigan folks last night while I was watching the game. Yeah.
It was a little somber going into work today. Everybody, no one's happy in Detroit right now.
Right. Nice, man. So, man, before we get things kicked off, dude, just we're going to talk some hunt. We're just going to go all over the place. Before we jump into that, let people know that are listening a little bit about you, just like to break the ice, like where you're from, what you do for a living, just like that kind of stuff so they have some context.
Yeah, I'm from St. Clair Shores, Michigan, just kind of outside of Detroit. I am a local 98 plumber, and I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu and avid hunter and outdoorsman. So
nice, man. So outdoorsman, would you say, are you... let me just ask it this way. What's your forte? Like if you had to pick like a season to hunt, like what are you picking? Because I know because you hunt. I see two very specific things for you, like in terms of hunting, and I'm just curious, like which one you lean toward.
That's a tough one. So Michigan's deer season, archery runs from October 1st to November 15th, and I also do like some out-of-state stuff, but right around November 15th, something in me flips a switch, and it's ducks. Just, I'll deer hunt a little bit after November. That's our gun opener. I'll hunt opening day, and then I'm chasing ducks out on the big water usually.
Nice.
So,
yeah. I got introduced, a buddy of mine, Wilson, introduced me to duck hunting and goose hunting, and I'd never done it until I was probably in my 30s. And it was... It was some of the most fun I think I ever had hunting, like full stop. Like even like I love bow hunting. That's my thing. You know, that's my jam. I love it. And it's fun, but it's a different kind of fun for me. Duck hunting was, or in just bird hunting in general, was a type of fun that was, for me at least, was low pressure, very communal, you know, target rich environment, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and so it was just a blast going out and hunting. And I don't do enough of it. I need to do more of it. But what kind of makes you gravitate toward ducks? Like what's the interest? Is that something you just always did growing up, or?
No, actually I started bow hunting when I was like, I think 12 in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
You were allowed to start when you were 12 back in the early 2000s, 90s.
Mm-hmm.
But I started duck hunting. I met a guy in plumber school actually, and that's all he did. He didn't deer hunt at all. So he ended up talking me into going duck hunting, and I think this is probably like my 11th season now of duck hunting. And honestly, what kind of drew me to it was being able to, you can kind of bullshit with your friends when you're duck hunting. You know, it's a different kind of torture than sitting in a tree with your thoughts, you know. Instead, and then certain kinds of duck hunting, like a lot of the stuff we do is actually kind of dangerous, you know. So that little danger element kind of makes it fun sometimes too, you know.
Right.
Being out
danger, how just because of how big the water is? Is that the?
Yeah, we do a lot of big water stuff. So obviously we keep it safe, but it can get dicey out there sometimes out on Lake St. Clair and Lake Erie. So
right. Is it just the amount
I'm a little crazy, I guess, because I enjoy that part of it sometimes.
Right. Is it the distance you're traveling for sure, or what makes it dicey? I mean, I know the big water's just like it's bigger, it's got kind of a life of its own and stuff like that. But aside from that, is it like the distance that you're going from shore and shit like that?
Yeah, sometimes the distance from shore, and then the lake can kind of flip a switch on, you know, sometimes. And I've sank a boat out there before. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Geez.
You got to try it. Especially, I mean, like I sank. Yeah, you definitely got to make a trip.
Sounds like I need to make a trip to Michigan.
Yeah, I'll keep you safe.
How did you sink a boat?
We were out on Lake St. Clair on New Year's Eve. So there's a waterfall. Waterfall season ends at a certain day, and then it opens back up for 2 days. It's usually around New Year's weekend, and it just was bad wind, bad decisions. We were getting into a lot of birds that we don't get to see very often. You know, we had a lot of like canvasbacks and stuff moving in, and just kind of got blind to what was going on around us. And next thing you know, we ate a couple waves over the bow and flipped. my brand new boat. It was like, and
man,
we didn't swim to shore. We kind of like jumped into shore with the waves. We were probably like a couple 100 yards offshore. But the lake had already frozen over completely at that point, and then thawed. It thawed right before the split, so it was about as cold as the water could be, and it was definitely a scare.
Yeah, that's the au naturel cold plunge right there, right? Right? Like,
yep. Yeah, I've had too many involuntary ice baths in my lifetime.
Nice, man, nice. So how was your deer hunting season this year, man? How'd things shake out for you?
Oh,
you were in Michigan, obviously Michigan, but you were in Ohio too, right?
Yeah, we started off in Ohio. I kind of got my ass kicked in Ohio, leading into honestly, I got my ass kicked in Michigan too this year until I went to Kentucky, and then we had some fun in Kentucky. I ended up, I shot a small buck and I shot a doe in Kentucky, and then I shot another doe in Michigan the day before Christmas Eve. So
nice. Got a little meat in the freezer. What was the challenge of the season? What was the I mean, I'm all too familiar with getting my ass kicked. This was like the first year that I had like a banner year, but usually that's the exception and not the rule for me. So I'm very familiar. So what was the challenges for you this year?
Honestly, for me, it was just I just wasn't seeing deer. It seemed like no matter what I was doing, it was a cat and mouse, and I was losing. You know, I did a couple trips in Ohio and just saw nothing, and it was kind of my fault for kind of hunting some spots, like hunting historical spots that I have experience with, and expecting things to happen the same way that they have in the past. You know, but
right.
I think the area we were hunting in Ohio kind of gets beat to hell because it's a CWD zone, so it opens up like 2 weeks before the rest of the state. So, and they have like extra rifle seasons and stuff too. So I think people are starting to catch on that area in general. Seemed like pressure was way up. And then I don't have any excuses for Michigan. It was just Michigan.
Right. I feel like Michigan is very similar to Pennsylvania, where I always say, like, I consider a good year in Pennsylvania when I have it, if I have at least one encounter with a good buck, like what I would classify for me personally as a shooter buck. If I do that in Pennsylvania, that to me is kind of a win, just because I've gone too many seasons of just not seeing one that I would pull my bow back on any of them, And so is that do you feel kind of the same way? It's like, I think people who aren't from Michigan or Pennsylvania or New Jersey, some of these high pressure states, because there are others that, if you've never been to those places or hunted those places, it's like you just don't know.
Yeah, no one really gets excited to hunt Michigan or PA. It's kind of like, but I don't know. I love hunting in Michigan. It doesn't take much to get me to pull my bow back in Michigan, though. I'm not super picky. Right. Yeah, I don't know. Nice. I only got so much time in the woods, so.
Right. Yeah. No, that's the thing too, man. I think a lot of people, when I hear people kind of, I don't want to say complain, but, just lament maybe their lack of success or, whatever the case is. I'm always quick to kind of point out, but like, man, like, if you only have but a couple days, like your expectations might be a little out of whack, because I always kind of tell this story, and I've said it multiple times, and people listen to the show is probably sick of hearing it, but I had a chat with Zach Farrenball the one day, and he's in the woods all the time, right? And this is probably 2 years ago, and he said during the course of that year, and it was a year that like those guys had kind of a down year of killing deer by their standards, And
was that 2021, right?
Yeah, I think that was the year, and he was behind a camera or a bow or a gun, so he was on hunts in some capacity for 100 days during deer season, and he was part of one buck getting killed, one, and so when you're talking about a 1% odds, you know what I mean? Like for a guy who's in the field that often, it's like you have to contextualize, man. It's like if you're a normal guy, you can only get out. If you're real lucky, maybe you get out 10 days a year. You know what I mean? During bow season, or whatever the case is. It's like, man, that's a lot. You know what I mean? And like if you kill a deer in those 10 sits, man, that's 10%. It's a 10% kill rate. Like that's pretty good, and and that's just not super realistic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Like what I got, stopping November 15th, I got 45 days to get it done in Michigan. And typically the property I have access to is an hour from my house. So I can hit it after work. But really, I mean, I don't really start doing that until the rut. So I guess I hunt twice a week, during the week. And then I'm also trying to do jiu-jitsu and work full time, so.
Right.
It like, I don't know if the right deer walks in front of me, sorry.
Right. It's gonna get it.
And there's people argue like just shoot a doe, and it's like, well, I would if I saw one, but I didn't, so I shot him.
Right. What type of places are you hunting in Michigan? Like, what's the terrain like? Is it because I know some of my buddies that hunt there. Some of them hunt like big woods areas, and then some of them are hunting a lot of swamps and stuff like that. And so I know there's a lot of kind of diversity in Michigan. So I'm just curious, what type of areas you're hunting.
Well, I kind of grew up hunting state land up north, which is just big woods, but nowadays, now that I'm blessed to be able to hunt this piece of property with a couple buddies, it's, I think it's 120 acres, and I think 60 of it is just woods. It just got clear cut for the first time in like 15 years, last year. So it's just down trees everywhere, swampy, no trails, no nothing. We're kind of been kind of trying to fix it up over time, and learn the property. I think it's my 5th year out there, but so I guess you just call it ag and deep timber,
Right. Nice. So that cutover is going to be. When was that cut? Was it cut just recently?
It was. They were just. Well, actually, It was last September. Not this past September, but 2022 September is when they cut it. So I think this year, what do they say, 3 years or something is when it's supposed to start kind of greening back up.
Be primo. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we did have, I saw the biggest buck I saw this year personally was probably 140. And, but other than that, the maybe a couple 120s running around the property, but lots of, I haven't killed a buck in Michigan in 2 years. I've been actually being good and passing smaller deer. So it's getting a little better over there.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you have a place that you can do a little bit of work and you can, I don't want to say manage, but you can, try to get a couple, up and comers through to the next year to give them a chance and stuff like that. Like that's always, it's I guess what I find is that when people have that opportunity, they usually take it, right? Like as far as like if I have a 120-inch deer and it's a property that I have a little bit of control over, the odds of me shooting that deer this year, especially if it's late in the year and I'm like, man, he could get through. Like my dad's place is a good example. He's got 60 acres and my father-in-law has like 280, I think, that I've hunted. I haven't hunted it in some years. But when I did hunt that, or even now, like my dad will send me pictures of stuff and like, hey, why don't you come back and hunt this buck? And I'm like, you know what? If he makes it through this year, he has one that this year that I watched that he'll sit out on his porch and watch him come out and like to his yard and stuff like that. Cause it's out in the middle of freaking nowhere and he lives up on top of this mountain. And, I didn't hunt there this year, but he showed me a picture of that deer that he took literally with his phone coming across his yard, like after gun season was over. And I was like, I'll probably be back next fall to hunt. Right. Because like that deer, made it through, you know what I mean? And I'm like, he's a really good buck. And I was like, I'll come back and hunt next year because, especially put a couple trail cameras out if I know he's around, and that, and I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or what, man. And I'd just be curious from your perspective of this, but I enjoy like the hard grinding travel hunts, like whether you're going to Ohio or wherever I happen to be going or whatever the case is. But there's part of me now, it's like as I'm getting a little older where, my dad doesn't hunt a whole lot anymore, but he would if I would go back, And so I feel like I need to kind of go back and hunt with him a little bit. And so he gets out and just to have that experience like I used to have whenever I was a kid, like hunting with my old man, because you don't know how many opportunities you ever get of that when you get a little bit older. And so part of me now is like, okay, there's a good deer back there. I can go back and hunt with the old man, stay at his place, have a couple beers afterwards and just kind of have a good time. So I don't know if you feel kind of the same way as you're getting older. Like, does it get a little bit more sentimental or does it mean something different to you than it used to?
Yeah, I guess I'm only on like my third or fourth year of traveling. So I think I'm still kind of really starting to really enjoy it. It's hard to I actually sat with my dad and hunted for the first time in years. I sat and hunted with him this past season and it was great, but like I don't know, getting those out of state trips is kind of what I'm living for right now, getting to spend a week with the boys and just learn new states. We've done Missouri, Kentucky, Ohio now, and it's just for me it's just fun learning new spots and being able to just wander, and you got 1 week to kind of figure an area out. I feel like I just learned so much more than I do hitting the same spots, same pieces, sit in the same stands kind of deal that I've been doing my whole life.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like that for me was like the biggest kind of, jump probably for me in terms of just becoming a better hunter and growing as a hunter was when I started just traveling and like you said, just going to a place and saying, hey, I'm giving myself 5 days, 7 days, whatever it happens to be. I'm going to see what I can figure out. And then if you go back a couple of times, you start to kind of put pieces together and it becomes, I don't want to say easier, but you at least are dealing with a little bit more, information. Now, do you do any scouting before you head to those places? Because I used to, like when I first started doing it, and now I basically, whenever I go somewhere, if it's not a place I've been previously, I go in completely blind, like don't know anything about the spot, and I just kind of go in and go out and get at it.
Yeah, like I know Ohio, I did a lot of scouting, turkey hunting. I'd go down there turkey hunting and cover a lot of ground in the spring. And then I went to a jiu-jitsu event down in I think it was like Cincinnati or something, and I drove right through where I normally deer hunt and just spent a few hours scouting. So I guess Ohio is easier for me because it's like 2 hours, but I'm not driving to Missouri to scout. You know,
right? Yeah.
I wish
yeah, for sure.
I mean, maybe if I didn't do all the other stuff I do, you know.
Yeah, you gotta definitely pick your battles. It's interesting too. Like, I just like to travel. Like, the things that I'm interested in, I just like to experience them in different places with different people. So like in hunting, I like to go to these different states because, one, I've never been there before. It's a little bit of a new experience, learning curve. Pressure's a little bit different. Topography, terrain might be a little bit different, and I kind of get a good sense of like where my skills are at because, like you said, like when you hunt the same places over and over again, like this is like my own mental game, but it's like I start to think I'm fooling myself. I'm like, man, I got things figured out and I'm getting better, but I'm like, am I really, or do I just have like really good institutional knowledge of like the places that I'm going? And is that why? Right. And so the funny thing is like I started doing it, not to the extent that you do, but I started doing it with jiu-jitsu, where it's like you start to learn the guys in the room with you, and it's like, I know what he likes to do, so I'm not going to give him his A game, and I'm going to defend like all the stuff I know he wants to do. And then, am I actually getting any better? Or am I just getting better at like defending this stuff that he likes to do? I'm sure I'm getting better, but then I'd start traveling for work, or whenever I travel to hunt, if there's a place I can drop into and train, then I like to see, how do I do against guys or in a tournament that have no clue what I do for my game, and I have no clue what they do, right? And it's just, how much do I trust my jiu-jitsu? It's almost like the same in hunting, where I'm like, how much do I actually trust my hunting?
It's very similar, but one thing I've noticed with hunting and with jiu-jitsu, amongst hundreds of other things, but sometimes, I don't know, you that knowledge goes, it transfers, like, quickly when you're rolling. If you roll, like I do a lot of like loop chokes and stuff. Mm-hmm. And the other day I was at a different gym and I was rolling with somebody, and within a half a second of him having a grip on my collar, I was like, oh, this is a loop choke guy. And I actually made a comment about it, and he laughed, and he's like, that's like my main move. And I was like you, so training with a guy who loves Kimuras, training with a guy who loves guillotines, like, you learn how to just feel, you just instantly can tell that that's what they want to do when you do it enough. So as long as you got a wide variety of training partners that like to try different stuff, it's going to translate to visiting other gyms and tournaments,
Right.
Same with deer hunting,
Right. And I was going to say, that's kind of been my experience, where it's like I've gone there and it's like, and I could feel like, for example, I was rolling with a guy, and he was a leg lock guy, and I didn't know that whenever we started, but like as soon as I started playing guard and how he kind of tried to enter my guard, I was like, oh, he wants to get into a leg entanglement. Like, I knew right away.
Yeah, that's usually pretty obvious.
But I'm very new, right? So it's like, one stripe blue belt here versus a black belt, right? So it's
sometimes you can just look at what he's wearing and you'll know he likes leg locks. If he looks like a dork, you're like, oh, this guy's gonna touch my feet,
right? It's funny because like when I roll with new guys, like immediately they're always like, oh, you're a wrestler. Like, they'll literally say it while we start rolling. We're like, oh, you wrestle.
Yeah.
Like that, you can just tell by like the grips, you know what I mean? And I feel like the same way, like you were saying with deer hunting, like all that stuff translates. And it's because, like you said, you have a wide range of training partners, helps you kind of feel that stuff real quick, right? Especially, I mean, you've got years of experience, so I don't feel that stuff nearly as quickly as you do. But in a hunting sense, that traveling out of state and doing all that stuff and hunting, for me, hunting plain states, hunting swamps, hunting mountains, hunting big woods, hunting small parcels, like all that stuff gives me this like wide training partners in hunting. That way, whenever I go somewhere new that I've never been before, I usually have like a recall of something that I've seen somewhere in the past 5-10 years. I can go, oh man, this really feels or sets up kind of like this place I was at in Missouri one time,
Yeah.
And it kind of gives me a starting point, right?
That's kind of what I did. Like honestly, when I go to Ohio, I kind of gravitate to areas that I am used to. Like, I don't like hills at all. Like I'm like looking for ag fields, transition lines, like flat, even though I could go to hills and learn. So I've just been doing that same thing. So then when we just went to Kentucky this year, I almost killed a buck on the first night and ended up killing a doe the next day. But I went right to field edge. You know what I mean? Like what looked like bedding type of thing, and just do what I always do. And after I did that, I was like, all right, now we actually ended up getting a piece of permission on a private piece while we were down there. And it was all just like hills, no ag whatsoever. And I was like, sweet, I'm going to see if I can figure out how to kill a buck in here. And I mean, it was a 6 point, but
nice.
I kind of listening to podcasts, studying, learning, like kind of put the pieces together and realized like I'm on the saddle with what I think is bedding here, rub line here. They literally came from where I thought that they would be bedding and did exactly what I thought they would do. And I was using the thermals with the wind and all that. Like, it was just perfect. And I was like, cool. I'm glad. I'm so much more proud of killing this buck here than anything that I've shot on a farm in the past couple of years, you know? So.
Right. Dude, that's awesome, man. Like, it is such a like sense of an accomplishment, right? Like, whenever you go into a piece and you have very limited information and you play the scenario correctly and you play the wind correctly and all those things, because there's so many variables that we have to deal with just as hunters in general. And then you throw in the fact that, like, you know, when you're traveling somewhere, especially new like that, it's like, we're like, I know jack shit about what I'm walking into, you know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to fill a tag is just awesome, dude. So you had to have been feeling pretty stoked after that.
Yeah, filling 2 tags. I was very stoked. You know, when I was only there for 5 days. You know, and then I got to film for my buddies. You know, so
that's awesome.
No, I was very, very happy with my season this year. So
all right, so I'm going to ask you a question here. All right, so on the stoked level, right? Shooting a buck on a travel hunt in a place that you're unfamiliar with, like that, right? Winning a black belt tournament. Or getting your limit on ducks, on like a rare duck or a rare type of duck that you would hunt for your area.
Okay. Yeah.
On the big water. Like what kind
of buck?
Which one?
Like a nice buck or?
Ooh. Okay. Let's say like your best buck you've ever shot.
My biggest buck I've ever shot.
Yeah. Let's say it's like it would be if you killed it, it would be the big.
Yeah, that's number one. But then I guess the tournament's close because I've only won. I think I've won a couple of super fights, but I think I've only got 1 gold medal at black belt now. I've only been a black belt for a year, but yeah, I don't know if I win like an IBJJF Open at black or something, that might top. It's not going to top my biggest buck ever, but it'll top the 6 point I shot in Kentucky. That's for sure.
Right. It's funny how we, you know, the passions that we have, how we kind of at different times they mean more to us, right? You know, because for example, like, you know, I was talking to a buddy of mine. I was like, man, I had a great year this year. You know, 2023 was pretty good to me. You know, killed that buck in PA, which was awesome. That's something I wanted to get done. You know, on a kayak, I killed that hammer deer.
Yeah, I was going to say that was.
Yeah, you know, and then before that though, it was like, and part of it was that the Kansas thing was like the pressure was off because like I shot one in Pennsylvania, and that's kind of been the monkey that's been on my back because I've been trying to kill one in this particular spot for like a couple years. But then also right before that, I got my blue belt promotion in September, which for me was a big deal. You know, like I was super stoked on that. And after I got that, I was kind of like, man, hunting can whatever, dude. I was like, I achieved like a goal that I wanted to have. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to get this thing done, you know, and you never know when it's going to happen. And I was stoked that it happened when it did. And so from there, I was like, man, I'm playing with house money. Like 2023 has been great. And then I killed that buck in PA, and I'm like, dude, got my promotion, got a buck in PA and a kayak. And I was like, so when I went to Kansas, I was like, whatever, dude. I was like, we're just gonna let it rip.
That's when it works out too. Is when, you know what I mean. You were just there enjoying it, you know, and no stress. Yeah. So yeah, that's when it comes together. It seems like
it's something like, because I'm curious, man. Because I feel like, you know, like that was that way for me for hunting this year. Was that I just felt like I was playing with house money the whole year, and so I was just willing to let it fly. And I kind of almost feel and again, I'm new in the jiu-jitsu game, compared to you. But the last tournament I did, the first one I did, I went in with a little bit of apprehension. And then the second one I did, I just kind of went in and was like, I'm going to just do what I do and let it rip, and see what happens. And I ended up submitting everyone I competed at least once, because some guys I had to compete with twice. And so like the one guy,
I saw you did a grappling industries.
Yeah. So the one guy, I beat him in points, and then I fought him in no-gi, and I submitted him in no-gi.
I hate doing that.
But I beat him in points.
I hate doing that. If I beat you once, I don't. It's say like if you beat me, all right. If you beat me once today, I'm done. I don't want to lose again today.
Right. And so, but I feel like, do you feel kind of the same way? Like, because when I go into things and I'm just going to let it rip, even when I roll with my coach, because I don't know what it is. Like, it's not as bad as it used to be, but I used to go into rolls with him and I would be so self-conscious of like wanting to not make mistakes. And he's a 4th degree black belt, right? And like, and show that like I'm picking stuff up and I'm not making stupid mistakes. And then I finally just got to, and part of it is too out of like respect. Like I don't want to do anything stupid because I want to be respectful, because he's spending time rolling with someone who has no business being on a mat with him. And then I just realized I was like, no, I should just let it rip and do the things that I want to do, and do the things that I know that I can do, and whatever, and that's what he would want me to do. And as soon as I started doing that, my rolls with him got way better.
That's when I've always done best in jiu-jitsu. Like if I overthink something, or even if I over prepare sometimes, like it's all in your head, if you can. Sometimes like I've had matches where like I got injured, like let's say it's like 5 weeks out and I got injured the first week, which seems to be pretty common for me. And so by the time the match rolls around, you haven't really trained like you wanted to, and you're just kind of like, fuck it, like I'm gonna do my best. Mm-hmm. And it sometimes ends up being one of your best performances, So that's like a lot of guys I know that I try to like convince to compete and stuff. They're like, oh, I'm not ready, or oh, I haven't been training hard, or oh, I got injured. And I'm always like, dude, it's never going to be perfect. And sometimes it works better, It's hard to explain, but
yeah. And I feel like hunting's the same way too. I feel like I feel like we have because I feel like we have so much buildup for hunting a lot of times, because it's like the season, a specific time frame. Because like competing wise, right? Like there's tournaments throughout the year, depending on what level you're at, the type of tournaments that you're willing to do and stuff like that. For a guy like me, it's like I could compete every freaking week if I wanted to. There's enough like tournaments around that you could I could get to if I really wanted to. And so I think if you do that, it allows you to let it rip, because well, if I don't like my result from this week or this month, I can go do it again next month, and just keep doing it and getting better.
Not with hunting. And next year,
right? And with hunting. Right, next year, right. And hunting has that specific kind of time frame where it's like, man, September's coming, and you put all your eggs in that basket, and you're just, you the build up to it is so much that if you just remember, like, I don't want to say just let it rip, like you want to be smart about it, just like you want to whenever you're competing. You want to be smart, you want to play your game, you want to, have a plan, right, and things like that, but don't be afraid to go off your plan. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that's the one thing that I learned probably the most from jiu-jitsu that I actually apply to hunting, is that I always like to have a plan when I go into a roll. Even with some of the guys I roll with when I train, it's like I like to have like I know what they like to do, and I want to have at least a plan to like pass their guard or whatever the case is. And if I get into a certain spot, I know how I want to make sure I'm defending this because they like to do this. But that's just like a framework. And then like once we get into it, I'm going to feel what's happening and just and roll with like however things are kind of manifesting in the moment, right? And I feel like going into hunting with a plan is great because it gives you, if you don't have an idea of what you're doing, you can get back on a course, right? You can get back on a path. Yeah,
but you also are not going to predict what's going to happen. You know what I mean? To a T every time. And in jiu-jitsu, your game plan goes. If you plan on wrestling today and you slap bump and the guy pulls guard, it's like, oh well, I thought, fuck,
right?
Or you plan on wrestling and the guy takes you down, and then you're like, oh, I guess I got to win this match off my back now,
right?
And same with deer hunting. You're walking into your spot where you think a deer might be bedded, trying to get close, and you bump them out of there, and you're like, fuck, well. I got to do something different now,
Got to make a different plan. Then having that plan is always nice. That if you're like, okay, now this happens, so I'm going to execute X, Y, and Z off of it. Maybe I'm going to scout more today, or like, hey, I think they're transitioned now to this particular bedding area because the pressure's coming. Whatever the case is, and you try those things and you exhaust them, and you're like, okay, well, shit, like none of that worked, right? And so now what do? Well, you had a plan. Go back to the plan. Like, where are you at in that plan now, and start from that again, right? And it's the same. I feel like it's similar, and it might just be because of where I'm at in my jiu-jitsu journey, and like newer, to where it's like I'll have a plan, I'll work it. And then when it changes, I'll roll with it. And then as soon as I get into a spot where I'm like, I'm lost, like I'm like, oh man, I don't really know what's happening here. Then I'll go back to some very, very fundamental things, right? Like it always happens to me with guys that roll a lot of leg entanglements, right? Like I like doing leg entanglements, but like there's a couple guys at the gym that are really, really good at it. The one guy's, a brown belt, probably soon to get his black belt at some point. And we'll get into them, and like we'll start, and I'll be kind of working for a heel hook, and he'll be defending, letting me play, and like we'll kind of roll a couple times, and I'll try to get into like a saddle position or whatever, and then we'll roll again, and then I get lost, and I'm like, I have no clue, and all of a sudden now my foot's outside, and now I just got heel hooked. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
It's like, and I get lost, and that's like what I'm learning is like when that happens, like I got to have a plan and just make sure, like at minimum, I'm hiding my feet. You know what I mean? Whenever that happens. And in deer hunting, I feel kind of like it's the same way. It's like when shit goes haywire, like hide your feet, or revert back to the thing that you're really good at, right? So it's like if you're really good at, scouting and finding new areas, like go do that. If you're really good at hunting, like hills, find some hills. If you're really good at hunting swamp, wherever you're at, find some swamp. Like go back to like your bread and butter and kind of start again from there.
Yeah. It's always a lot worse when your opponent knows your plan too. Like if you're rolling with a brown or black belt leg locker, and he knows what your reactions are going to be, he's already a step ahead of you. And
right.
Same goes if a deer knows if he knows where you're accessing every day and he's been watching you. You gotta try something different.
There's so many parallels. It's crazy because that access piece is 100% right, man. Because that's how the guys that are advanced guys, they don't do stuff by accident. They know what's happening 3-4 moves in advance. You know what I mean? Like where you're going to end up and what your reaction is going to be to X, Y, and Z. And the deer are the same way. Like you have to think about them. Because someone asked me one time, I thought it was a really interesting question. Because they asked me what belt they thought. They said, just as they're like, Clint, what belt do you think you would be in deer hunting? And I was like, wow.
I was thinking about that today.
Yeah, I was like, that's a really good question because I look at the deer, and the deer are like coral belts. You know what I mean? Like, like creme de la creme, right? And I was like, man, that's a really great question. I would probably
if you
have
say
to
you think you're a black belt in deer hunting too, you're kind of like, oh, am I?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like I had to think about it honestly, and I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm probably like an okay purple belt.
No, you're definitely a black belt in deer hunting, only because I've listened to you quite a bit. And honestly, I've been deer hunting since I was 12. I would probably say I'm a black belt in deer hunting too. I'm just a shitty one, and I'm a mediocre black belt in jiu-jitsu. But you put a decade or more into something that you love and you're very passionate about, and you think about 24/7,
right?
You're gonna be a black belt in it. There's Dan Infalt black belts and there's Steve Smallridge black belts.
That's a great way to think about it, man. Because I think the hardest part that people, when they think about deer hunting, and the reason why I said I was a purple belt, and this is the wrong thing for me to do. Like, and you're actually right, is that when I think about deer hunting, and I said, I'm an okay purple belt in deer hunting, and the reason being is because I was comparing myself to the Dans of the world, or the Andy Mays of the world, or the Eddie Claypools of the world, and stuff like that. But the thing is that your capability isn't in comparison to anybody else, and that's the same thing that like you have to learn in jiu-jitsu, or else it can make it miserable for you. Especially like when people get promoted, and like maybe someone started after you and they got promoted before, whatever the case is, right? Like you can fall into that trap of, man, like he's doing this and I'm still here, and it's like, but it's not a how do you compare against with the person that you train with every day. Like that's not.
No, it's you're a black belt version of yourself is basically what it is. Like,
Right.
if I compared myself to Gordon Ryan, I would be a white belt. I would never get my black belt. But
Right.
like, obviously, like black belt is a very broad spectrum, and when you get your black belt, you're kind of like, okay, now I'm just the worst black belt in the world, and I'm going to try to get better at being a better black belt.
Right.
And yeah, you can't compare it to the best in the world. Sometimes it's about who you are as an individual. You know,
Right.
Are you the best version of yourself as a hunter as you're going to be with the time you're given, the body you're given? You know, everybody has a different road. You know.
That's so good, man. Like, and more people need to adopt that as deer hunters, man, because there's so many people who I think get downtrodden because they don't live in an area that maybe has the caliber of deer that they want to hunt, or that they see other people hunting, or whatever the case is, or maybe they don't have the amount of time that other people have, like, to go out, right?
Or they don't have an uncle with 300 acres. You know what I mean? Like,
whatever the case is, right?
You can't compare yourself to people like that, and
right.
Same goes for jiu-jitsu. You can't compare yourself to people who are freak athletes, people who obviously but then you got the people who dedicate their entire life to jiu-jitsu and they choose to be poor and live in a house with 5 different dudes and really pursue their dream, which all of us are capable of doing. Me and you we could go buy a camper and go travel the country together and probably get better at deer hunting, but I don't know. I'm married. You know,
I would be divorced. Yeah, we'd have to be living in that thing permanently at that point. Yeah, man. I mean, it's so funny, man. There's so many parallels, and there's so many good lessons that I've learned, you know, since I've started, you know, that have related to deer hunting that I actually truly like. I think people think it's bullshit, but I 100% think that it's made me a better deer hunter. I think for nothing more than like I think I have a better perspective and a better outlook on what deer hunting and bow hunting means to me now than I had for the 10 years prior.
Well, your first 10 years of hunting, you probably didn't realize how much you were learning, and now that you're a black belt in hunting and you're starting jiu-jitsu, you're realizing how you're learning exponentially fast. You know what I mean? And it's just kind of teaching you that you can do the same for hunting as far as learning and mastering your craft. You know,
right? Yeah. There's the other thing that I always thought of too. I'd be curious to get your opinion on this. Like when I was talking to my coach, you know, I had him on the podcast probably like a year ago or something like that. And we were just kind of talking about the different belts and like what they, you know, what he looks for, like what they mean just in a general context and stuff like that. And, you know, capabilities that one might have at different levels. And I think about this stuff like we were just talking related to deer hunting. And the one thing that struck me that he said, and I kind of took it to heart, and it was something I started thinking about in relationship to bow hunting. And it's kind of something that you were just hitting on, which was, he said he felt like he wasn't any good at jiu-jitsu whenever he became a black belt. That he felt like that was really the time that he then started learning jiu-jitsu, was when he became a black belt.
It's like starting over, yeah, for sure.
And it blew my mind, because I was like, you know, as a person who's ascending, right? Like that's like, you look at it and go, man, I mean, especially when you roll with those guys, you're like, dude, if I could just be able to do a quarter of what that guy does, like that would be, I'd feel like I really accomplished something, right? And it's the same thing with bow hunting, where it's like, you look at certain guys, you're like, man, if I could have a quarter of the success or a tenth of the successes Eddie Claypool has had in his life, like, man, like I would really be doing something. And then I started thinking about it going, well, that's kind of where I'm at in deer hunting. Like that, you know, skill level, or that kind of place that you get where you've got the fundamentals, like, you know, all these things, right? It really gives you the license to now truly explore and become an artist with it, right? And that's where the art kind of comes in. And that's when you see the guys, like we were just mentioning, like the Dans and stuff like that. Like what they do isn't so much deer hunting as it is almost like an artistry of chasing critters, you know, because it's not linear at all, right?
And I think there's more than one way to do it too.
Right.
You know?
Because I think when you start bow hunting, like you're looking for the linear path of deer beds here, he eats here, intercept at Y, right? And I think when you start jiu-jitsu, you're learning moves. You're learning, this is how I do an arm bar, right? And this is how I get into the right position, and I hold the arm like so, and then I, finish this technique this way. But then as you advance, you realize, man, I can hit that from 100 different places, in 100 different kind of positions, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then bow hunting's the same way, where it's like, I just need to know where they're bedded and where they're feeding, and I might not even need to know all that, because it's just going to be a process of me figuring it out along the way, right? And that's the part that you fall in love with, is that part. And when you fall in love with that part, sky's the limit.
Yeah, it's and then once you learn the way, you see it in all things too. Like the
My
book
God.
of 5 rings.
Yeah, that is the truth. And people think it's foo-foo, but I'm like, man, it's not. You start to see it everywhere.
Yeah. If you don't see the correlation, you've never mastered anything in your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it doesn't have to be jiu-jitsu or whatever. It's just the mastery of something.
Yeah.
Like you start to see like the principles that apply,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And someone, I forget who I was doing the podcast with, and shoot, I wish I could remember who it was, but we were talking about like foundational skills, and that was the one thing like that really was eye-opening for me.
Was it Tony Peterson?
It might have been Tony. I thought it was more recent than that though, because he hasn't been on in a little while. But we were just whoever it was, we were just talking about, whenever you meet an expert in anything, football, hunting, baseball, jiu-jitsu, basketball, whatever it happens to be, running a business, whatever it is, they're usually not about the flash. It's usually like a lot of substance and a lot of foundational things that they do flawlessly on a daily basis, right? And that's the thing that gives them success. And then if they need to kind of turn up the wow factor for something because, an opportunity presents or it's what needs to be done, then they have that tool in their tool bag, but it's not their go-to, and I think about like all the guys who kill deer consistently, big deer consistently. It's like, man, they just do the fundamentals really, really well all the time, and they don't make a lot of mistakes doing them.
Yeah.
Yep. And you could think the same way with like a Hodger Gracie, like the dude won 5 world championships with the freaking cross
chokes.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like you learned it as a white belt. You know what I mean? It's like week 2.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, and the guy when he talks about it, he just says that. Yeah, you learn it as a white belt. Like in the first month that you do jiu-jitsu, he was like, but the small little details that make it unstoppable, I spent a lifetime perfecting.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it because cross chokes.
Yeah,
cross chokes suck, man. I don't know. Anytime someone tries to do one, I laugh at them. I can't remember the last time, but I know Hodger Gracie's gonna cross choke me.
Right? Yeah, exactly. But that's the point. It's like, what's your cross collar choke for a deer hunter? For what I mean? Like that's like, what is your go to? What is your bread and butter that you can do it?
A 30-06 in a corn pile.
Right. Yeah, because I was thinking that. Like I was actually thinking like, so what's your bread and butter for hunting? Like, when you're going to a new piece and you have to figure it out in your own short time, like what are you going to? Like as far as like an approach?
Depends on the time of year.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it's on a rut trip, I'm usually just looking for anything that's fresh, scrapes, transitions, trying to guess where the food is in relation to where the wind is blowing and where other people are accessing. I put a lot of thought into accessing from opposite directions,
Yep.
So I guess honestly just covering ground until something strikes my fancy,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because I think my cross collar choke of bow hunting would be scrapes, like community scrapes. Like that's the thing that I can dial in, and I spend time in the off season finding it, but I don't spend a ton of time. Like I kind of have a process now, even for like how I find my foundation, you know what I mean? To where it's like, I can do it kind of quick and I'll know pretty quickly whether or not they're worth my time or not, and that's
your understanding of scouting blows my mind when I hear you talk about it. Sometimes I'm like,
man, it's just like, it's just a lot of trial and error, man. It's just time doing it, and
lots of time.
No, it's just similar. It's similar to like a person who's a purple belt trying to ascend to become a black belt when they start to sharpen their toolkit, right? Because they know jiu-jitsu now. It just becomes, what is your game and what are you going to spend your time becoming?
Yeah. What do you need to add? Is big.
Right. Yeah. And so for me, it's like with bow hunting, it's like I I realized that after years of failing, I was like, I'm not a bed hunter. Like, that's not my game. Like, I hunt bedding areas, but I'm not like a guy that's going to set up 80 yards off of bed very often and get it right, you know? And so it was just, you know, finding the thing that worked for me, especially on the amount of time that I have, like, to hunt. Like, what is going to put me in the chips during hunting season most frequently, right? And so I just kind of doubled down on that stuff. And then I started finding like repeatable patterns, you know, of like places of like, all right, what trees do they like to make scrapes under typically in certain areas? What terrain features am I typically finding them in? And then I just kind of look on a map and I start finding that stuff, you know, and then I just beeline it to those places, you know, or I'll find a scrape line while I'm walking somewhere and I'm like, boom, I just start following it, right? And like if I look as I'm walking, I make it a couple hundred yards and I look on my map and be like, oh man, that's leading to a terrain feature that typically is where I find, you know, community scrapes. Or it's like I'm looking around going, oh man, I know in this area, like there's always typically scrapes under beech trees, right? And I'm looking around going, man, I'm getting into a bunch of beech trees. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just stuff like that. And it's just from doing it often enough, you know, and messing it up often enough. I mean, you know, hours of making bad choices has got you a black belt. You know what I mean? It's like, it's the same thing with scouting and stuff. It's like hours of being wrong, you know, and spending miles walking, you know, got me dialed in as to like what I look for, you know. It's just time and persistence is it, you know.
I definitely do feel like in the past 4 years that I've been doing like more out of state stuff, I've learned more in the past 3 years than I've learned in the past 15 years, you know, as far as deer hunting goes. Just from changing up what I was doing, you know.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, I definitely I'm starting, I don't know, hearing you talk about your cross choke though, I'm starting to think I might be a blue belt because I don't really have any particular style that I feel like is like, this is my go-to, this is where I have the most success. Because yeah, that's for me. But at the same time, it's like I'm always trying to expand that and learn, you know. And you're 100% right, man. Like when I started traveling out of state more frequently, or when I just made that a thing, that was when I noticed a big change. And the biggest change for me was actually, and I've said this before, is actually when I went to Iowa and did that Iowa hunt, you know, public land, but target rich environment regardless, you know, there's not a 180 around every tree like everybody thinks. Like the hunting's not hunting Pennsylvania, but it's not like you just walk outside and kill a deer, like, you know, and immediately. Because I was able to spend a lot of time watching mature deer do mature deer things. Like that was the biggest education I got, and just like reading their sign and how they reacted. Because whether you're in PA, Michigan, New Jersey, whatever the case is, you know, when you're seeing deer, like you're seeing pressured deer, like they're acting the way we know them to act in the places that we hunt them, because they have, you know, these things that they're dealing with pressure and people and stuff like that. But when you go somewhere like an Iowa or something like that, where you don't have it's not like it's pressure free, because that's also a myth, but it's not nearly as pressured. And so the deer just are more in their environment doing deer things. And, you know, I might see 2 mature deer all season in Pennsylvania, and those encounters collectively together, if I'm lucky, might last 3 minutes, you know, that I get to see them and watch them. And then that's it, you know. But while I was in Iowa, I literally had probably 5 to 6 seasons worth of mature deer encounters that I got to watch and just observe them do what they do, how they use the wind, and like how they enter areas and stuff like that. And that was the big thing that changed a bunch of stuff for me, was that one trip. Like, and it was just paying attention to it. You know, it's like, because I was there to hunt as much as I was like, and it wasn't like I knew this from the rip, but when I got there and I started watching, like I quickly realized, like, man, aside from trying to fill a tag and bring a deer home, the other thing I can bring home is like a better understanding of how mature deer want to behave. Right. And that was like a huge change for me. That changed that. Like, people say game changer all the time, and I hate that term, but that was literally a game changer for me, was that one hunt. And it wasn't filling a tag. It was actually all the stuff that I got to see, in the fact that it took me all 16 days to fill that tag, because I spent all 16 days hunting, you know? So yeah, so I'm always an advocate of like, man, go hunt places, but like do yourself a favor and go hunt at least one time somewhere where you're going to see a lot of mature deer, like in like a very kind just
of
see how they act, see where, you know.
a calm environment and to be able to watch them, because you will see them do things that you've never seen them do before, and you're like, oh, that's what they do. You know what I mean?
And you get more comfortable just being around bigger deer is very important, because
yeah, like there was a good example this year, that deer in Kansas. It was just like between Iowa and there, and even when I was in Missouri, like the encounters with the bigger deer that I had, like it wasn't like that was the first time I'd seen a big deer. You know what I mean? Now, first time I drew on one. Actually, that's not true either. It was like the second or third time I drew on a big deer, but it wasn't like I saw his rack and was like, shitting myself. It was like, it was. I was excited, but I was able to kind of pull my stuff together and get the job done. But and I don't know that I could say that if I hadn't seen big deer prior to that either.
Yeah. But that's where I've noticed, honestly, competing and having a deer in front of you, like just learning how to like calm yourself down when everything feels like chaos. There's a huge correlation there.
Oh my God, yeah.
That's where like having long jiu-jitsu matches, or having days where you have 5-6 jiu-jitsu matches in a day, and it's like that's a lot of minutes of adrenaline that you're living in and thinking and operating with, and it just translates so well to having a shooter in front of you,
Yeah. No, I gave full credit to the stuff that I do at the gym for the reason why I killed that deer. Like my hunting and paying attention and understanding the area that I was hunting and the glassing and stuff like that put me in position, put me in the right spot with the deer. But the reason why that deer got killed ultimately, and I said it in the first podcast I did with it and any of the other podcasts that I've done about it, was that jiu-jitsu actually killed that deer, because I was starting to come unglued. And I remember just like telling myself, like what I would tell myself whenever I'm rolling with like one of my purple belt buddies that are going to kill me. You know what I mean? It's like, they pass my guard and I'm getting crushed and it's miserable, and I just have to tell myself for a second, like, all right, calm down. You've been here before. Like, what's your plan? You know what I mean? Like, just start working a plan. Whatever
buggy
it is. Get your friend, get buggy choke with my short ass legs. That ain't happening. But it's like get my frames in, do all the be technically sound, like do the fundamental things right, and be consistent with them, like we were talking about before. And that was what that deer. It was like, all right, calm down. Get drawn, when you need to draw, here's your shot opportunity, it was just all that stuff. I was able to kind of go through and actually remember all of it, right? Because I think that's the other thing. Like people will do these things and it's like completely black out, right? And it's like,
yeah,
and have no recollection of what the hell happened,
Yeah.
And if the deer ends up dead, good for them. But I'm like, and I've done that. I mean, every deer up until that last one was like a autopilot blackout. This was the first.
It feels like a dream when you look back at it,
Yeah, this was the first one where it's like I was present. Yeah, like for the whole thing and remember everything, and that was part of it. And that's like, I'm so thankful for that, because I'm able to kind of like, to me, it's like that made me a better hunter. Like I know how to do that now. I can repeat that. I can stay in the moment.
I didn't get that far like competition wise until like well into my purple belt, where I could actually like walk out on the mat and be like in a competition setting and be able to think straight and function and even laugh and make jokes and stuff during a match, like stuff like that. Like I could never imagine doing earlier on,
Yeah, it was like, did you wrestle or anything growing up?
No, I didn't. No. So I started jiu-jitsu when I was 18. Okay. And then, but I competed a lot and didn't do well. It took me a long time to get, to even win I didn't win a match until I was a blue belt competing, and then even at blue belt, I won 2 matches. My last 2 blue belts, my last 2 matches at blue belt were my first and second wins ever.
Oh wow!
And then purple belt, I kind of just started to hit my stride, and then brown belt was awesome. Now black belt is kind of it's kind of rough.
Right. Well, you're the low man on the totem pole again. That's why it's always like funky. Like when you get that belt promotion and you go to another tournament, it's like, I'm like, 'cause I'm a blue belt now and I think my next tournament's going to be in April. That's what I'm targeting. 'Cause I always like to do
Which
one
one?
around there's a Grappling Industries one here in Philly.
Oh, I thought you might be going to do Nashville Open.
No, it's just there's a local one that always is around my birthday, and I like to do it because it's kind of like one of those things where I'm a year older and I'm going to celebrate it by doing something really hard with some buddies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this one will be at a new belt, and then I usually
blue belt is tough.
Yes,
because it's not so common nowadays, but I do remember when I was a blue belt, it wasn't uncommon for someone to be a blue belt for 7 years. So like, I remember like I was competing against people who have been blue belts longer than I've been training, you know?
Yeah.
And now I'm competing against people who are black belts longer than I've been training.
Right.
What's nice about what was best about brown belt is if someone kicks your ass, he's not going to be there very long. Like brown belt's the shortest belt, you know, so it's like like he's going to get his black belt soon, and I won't have to worry about that guy ever again, you know.
Right.
And then you get your black belt, and he's like, "What's up?
What's up, dude?
Remember me, bitch?"
Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing it because I usually have a barbecue afterwards, and since it's around my birthday, have the guys over from the gym and stuff like that. It's just like a way for me to celebrate doing another lap around the sun, like whatever. It's funny, like. I don't mind competing. It's funny. It's kind of a weirdo thing to do. And I started doing it a little bit with hunting too. It's like before I actually go out on the mat, you know, I'll be on deck or whatever, and I'll sit down along the edge and I'll close my eyes and I'll just meditate while I'm sitting there. You know what I mean? And just think. I read a book last year, and it was actually right before the last tournament I did. And it was a lot about, about presence and being mindful and being able to kind of like still your mind and, like amid chaos and stuff like that. And what it really talked about was, you know, not ignoring like feelings you have whenever things are bad, like when things are going poorly. Right. And it was more about examining those and understanding like where they're coming from and why they're there and what is the root of them. And as people are listening are like, Jesus, this can't turn into like a hippy dippy podcast. But, the point was like, you know, typically it's like whenever you're going to do something like that, or even whenever you're getting ready to go bow hunting like a big deer, you see a deer out like 100 yards away or whatever, and you're watching him, you know, I would sit along the mat and I would just close my eyes and like, I could feel the anxiety, you know, like the pre-match jitters or whatever. Same thing watching a deer. And I would just start saying like, hey, the anxiety is okay. Like, where's it coming from? It's because you want to perform well. Like you want to do well, you know, why? Because you've trained hard, you know, and why not?
It means a lot too. Yeah.
Right. And why not you today? And it means something to me. You know, it's not about other people. It's not about failing in front of other people. That's not what it is. It's because like this means a lot to me. And it's okay to have those feelings, you know, and it doesn't mean that I have to go win. Has nothing to do with that. It's just about me overcoming my own mind and my own obstacles. Right.
Yeah. And with a little bit of fear of getting injured in the process. Right.
And then, you know, and from that, I was, you know, when I would hit the mat, it's like I would be like freakishly calm, like whenever I would go out and just be.
That's where your wrestling might have took a little bit more of a role than you might notice too.
100%. Yeah, because I wrestled all growing up, and I would wrestle at open freestyle tournaments and stuff like that. So it's like
I've been in white belt. It's like every person I competed against is a fucking wrestler. Like they're like stone cold, totally calm, and I've been like throwing up in the bathroom, like. Like I've been grappling for 6 months and you've been grappling for 12 years. How is this fair?
How is this fair? Yeah. It's funny. After that last tournament, like the guys that I had beaten, I think I had 7 matches that day.
That's a lot. I remember I messaged you. You said you were doing a grappling industries, and I was like, don't do both divisions. And you were like, I am. And I was like, have fun. Yeah. That's a lot of matches.
Yeah. I did 7 matches. I had 5 submissions and 2 by points is
See,
what it was.
That's a good day though. Now we've had white belts where it was their first day, or it was their first competition ever. And I'm like, do not sign up for both divisions. And they do it anyway. Right. And they have 8 matches. And I know a guy who he took 8 L's in one day. And I'm like, I would never compete again if that,
right.
You know, but of course he actually, he's a badass. He competes all the time now and he's doing really well. But
nice.
Like, sometimes it's like, dude, you're going to get your ass kicked 8 times in one day when you could have got your ass kicked once and took that one lesson you learned and applied it to do a tournament next week. Just do something to change what happened in that match before you go and do it 8 more times. You're just, you know.
Yeah, was, I got done and like I was sitting off to the side, like was taking the tape off my fingers, and all the guys came over and sat down next to me. And, well, not all of them. There was like 4 of them came over and sat down next to me.
Couple salty ones didn't want to talk to you.
Yeah, I don't. The one guy might have been salty. I'm not sure, but like a couple of them came over and sat down next to me, and they just looks at me. And the one guy goes, "Where the fuck did you come from?" Like, and I was like, "What?" And he was like, "We've never seen you at any other tournament." Like, I was only like a 2-stripe white belt at that point.
Yeah,
and they were all like, 4-stripe white belts, like on the verge of getting their blue belt or whatever. And they were like, and the one guy's like, I saw you come out with tape when you're like all your fingers taped. He's like, I knew I was fucked.
That's such a white belt thing to say.
I know.
I remember I'd see people's ears when I was like a blue belt, and I'm like, oh, he's got cauliflower. He's gonna fuck me up.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, like I've competed against some terrifying individuals, and you lock up with them, and they're just soft. You're like, oh,
yeah,
you know. But you see them warming up, and you're like, fuck. You know,
right. And I just told him, I was like, yeah, you know, I wrestled growing up, you know, and I didn't go in the like beginner division. I went in like the, you know, the second division of the weight belt division, like the one where if you've had grappling experience, like, or whatever you have to go
intermediate,
into.
I think it would have been. Yeah.
And,
or no, Grappling Industries has a beginner and a novice.
Yeah.
I think novice is 0 to 6 months, and then beginner is a white belt.
Yeah.
And, which I like. I wish all tournaments had that. I wish they had that when I was a white belt.
Yeah. And then I just said, I was like, and for my age too, I was like, I trained like 4 days a week, and they were like, oh damn. And I was like, yeah.
That's like we talked before. That's impressive for your age, and then you have kids and a job and all that. You know, that's tough. Not a lot of people have it in them to do that. It's you know what I mean. You have to have a drive. Yeah,
I'm lucky that the gym literally is 2 miles from my house, so it's real easy for me.
Same.
Real easy for me to it's real easy for me to get there. And you know, and for hunting, I mean, even for hunting, man, it's like I have like a long-term goal of being able to hunt the way I like to hunt for as long as I possibly can. I want to be able to do jiu-jitsu for as long as I possibly can. And so I prioritize taking care of my body whenever I have days off. So it's like I cold plunge, I sauna, I lift, I do yoga,
sleep.
You know, I go to bed and I get, 7.5 hours, 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. You know what I mean? Like I prioritize all that because it just helps with my recovery, helps me feel good, helps me overcome injuries a little bit more quickly and stuff like that. And so I do all the stuff that I can. And then like our gym's kind of notoriously tough. Like it's just like there's a bunch of good dudes that train there, and it's just like, and so whenever you're a white belt and most of your rounds at the gym are with purple belts, and brown belts and like high level blue belts that compete, and
you're going to get good fast. Yeah.
And a couple black belts, that you've become friends with. So they kind of took you under your wing and help you. It's like, yeah, man, it's like all of a sudden you start getting,
those guys are also a lot less likely to hurt you too. So it's easier on your body, believe it or not. Rolling 100%. People are better,
100%.
Yeah.
Like that is so true because I'm very like I'll go roll with any black belt, any size. I don't care. Like there's one guy that I roll with. He's I think the last time I talked to him, he was like 284. That's a big boy. He's a bodybuilder. Like he's huge. He do full splits. He's a one stripe. He's a first degree black belt. And I roll with him, and I feel the safest rolling with him out of anybody.
Yeah.
And because it's just like he's so smooth with his technique, nothing's herky jerky. And I learn a ton from him.
And he knows how to not squash you because he's probably squashed a few people when he was a blue belt.
Right, exactly. And so it's been a good run, a good run there. I enjoy it. And it helps me. It's helped me. Would I be as into it as I am if it didn't help me deer hunting? Probably, but there's a part of me that thinks maybe not quite as into it. But the fact that like it bleeds over and helps me with that and has actually made me better at that, it's like, man, like I'll never
probably
stop.
expected it when you first walked into the gym. You probably never expected to be saying that.
It was the furthest thing from my mind. I mean, I think the thing was, and I think this is good with anything, whether it's bow hunting or whatever, I went into it with an open mind of like, I don't know what this could impact, like I don't know how this might change things, but I'm open to it. And because I was open to it, I could quickly start to see the ways that it was impacting other aspects of my life, hunting being one of them. And then it made me look at hunting differently too, where it was like, I've never been that open about hunting. Hunting was always like a very, I don't want to say selfish thing because it still kind of is for me, especially bow hunting. But I wouldn't pay attention as much to like the ways that it enriched my life as I'm trying to figure out how to say this. I always knew that it enriched my life in ways outside of just the hunt, but I see even more ways now that it enriches my life outside of the hunt than I did before, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but dude, how do you balance, like, cause it was tough for me. It's tough for me during hunting season to kind of hit the balance of like getting out to hunt, getting gym time in. Cause I'll be honest with you, dude, like if I train like Friday night, like it's hard for me to get up Sunday morning or Saturday morning to go hunt. Like, just because I'm dog shit tired, and then sometimes I'm a little sore trying to pull the bow back isn't quite the, isn't so easy or isn't as easy as it should be. So how do you balance everything during the season?
Can I take a piss really quick and I'll tell you?
Yeah, go ahead. All
right. Give me 1 minute. I'm going to, all right. Sorry about that. Sweet. I had a large Tim Hortons.
Nice.
I was trying to be tough.
Right. So what we were talking about was balancing like hunting with training, and how you kind of strike that balance. Cause it's a challenge for me. Like I got lucky this year because I filled the tag early, so I didn't have to balance quite as much as I typically would.
Yeah, you're local. Cause are you guys one buck state or two?
Yeah, $1.
One. Yeah. See, we're two. So it's, I wish we were $1, but, yeah, for me, what I do is during deer season, I would go hunt the morning and then I would go to competition class at 11 o'clock. And like I would wake up at 4, drive an hour, hunt as long as I can, drive an hour back, and then go step on the mats when I was in my 20s. Now that I'm in my 30s, I think 2 seasons ago, I kind of made a rule for myself, like 2 days a week during hunting season. And honestly, this year, once you start to get run down, like I usually lose like 10 to 12 pounds every hunting season, which some people gain weight. I lose weight during hunting season because I'm just not eating like I'm used to, and I'm burning a lot of calories. But I made a rule for myself, no more than 2 days a week during hunting season. And then this year, during the rut, I went down to 1 day a week. And honestly, I didn't like that because my 1 day a week was comp sessions. So I'm not only am I we're going hard in the comp sessions, and it's just I don't think my body was limbered up. Like I just wasn't accustomed to the movements. So I think I got some work to do as far as finding the sweet spot goes.
Right?
But
yeah,
really, it is. I have to dial it down during hunting season, or I'm going to hurt myself. And I don't take matches during hunting season anymore, unless it's something really important. Like I usually do No-Gi Worlds every year, which is in December, and a lot of times, what is it, like December 19th or something like that? I think December 12th. Usually, it falls on one of those weekends. I'm kind of building back up by that point. I'm still duck hunting a lot, but I definitely don't compete during hunting season, I guess would be a good balance.
Right. Yeah. It's there's definitely an aspect of it to like detraining, you know what I mean? To where like your body gets detrained to a point to where, cause I remember when I hurt my shoulder and I was going to physical therapy, trying to get back to be able to shoot a bow. And, cause that was my only goal. I was like, I just want to be able to shoot my bow by the time, like my regular bow by the time, bow season comes in. And, went to, work with a physical therapist, and he's a brown belt. So he knows, what I need and stuff like
perfect,
that. Yeah. He's awesome. And, his name's Artem. I'll just give him a shout out. Good dude. And, I asked, like, you want me to stop? He's like, well, I know you're not going to stop training. He's like, so we won't have that discussion. He's like, we train through injuries all the time. He was like, but I need you to scale it back for me so I don't have to like, basically reprimand you and say, hey, like you got to stop, He's like, I don't want you to stop entirely. He's like, because you're more likely to get hurt again going back. He's like, if you detrain too far, he was like, I need you to like be smart, not like hurt yourself. Know when you've had enough. Let's scale back the live rounds, let's scale back your bow shooting, right? To, gave me kind of a regimen to follow. He's like, because I just don't want you to detrain to the point to where you're having another injury after you kind of go back full time and then you're back seeing me again for something else, So
that's kind of what I'm going through. So I have a shoulder problem as well, and I know it was bugging me all of hunting season, and in those comp sessions that I was still doing during hunting season, I was trying to dial it back, but I don't know. I think part of it might be being a black belt. Everybody wants to take your fucking head off when you train with them, But like, honestly, I was like talking with my wife about it. She's a personal trainer, and And I'm like, I honestly think that if I dial it back too far, I'm more at risk of getting injuries because I'm letting people pass my guard. I'm getting smashed more. People are getting on my arms more. Whereas if I was going 60% instead of 40, I wouldn't be getting put in these bad positions and getting my arm cranked on and stuff. You know what I mean? Right. So it's like, it's almost like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, as far as scaling it back goes sometimes. Yeah. But if you got the right training partners and they know the problem is you don't like telling people when you're injured either, because you don't want them to feel like you don't want to inconvenience them by like, oh, don't attack either of my arms, but let's roll. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I did tell the guys like at first, and it was just like, hey, got a bum shoulder, and my one buddy, like, he's just like a maniac with Kimuras, like from everywhere. And so he just like, he didn't hit me with a Kimura for probably like 6 months. And then I was like, hey, I was like, I'm good. Like, I'll just tap. I'm good enough now. It's still like not 100%, but I'll just tap. Like, so you do what you're going to do. And if I feel like I'm in danger, like, I'll tap before you even get my arm out, I'm tapping, And so I just adhered to the idea of like tap early, tap often during that. And I'm still a little stubborn with that, but
I've listened to you talk about your shoulder injury, and I think our injuries are actually kind of similar. And I found that mine isn't as much as people attacking the arm. It's what I'm doing. Framing. And then I found I do a lot of loop chokes. So you're hand in the collar and you're flaring your elbow up like that. So I'm playing knee shield and I'm flaring this arm. And I found out that was kind of what was hurting me. So when I roll with people, I just can't do certain things, and I'm starting to find a balance, So you could armbar this arm, you could Kimura this arm, but if I try to frame too hard with you, or if I post on a takedown or something, that's when it really starts to get aggravated.
That was the same thing. Like I couldn't use it to push off. Like even when I would shrimp, like I couldn't get up on top of it or anything. Like it was just, it was like I was for a good solid at least 3 months, I rolled with one arm, basically, where I just couldn't use it.
The back of your shoulder underneath your scapula, kind of like your rhomboid or your trap, right? Yeah, you got a big old knot right there.
Yeah, I mean, mine's got all kinds.
I've tried everything.
I separated my AC joint because I fell on it, and that's kind of what kicked it all off.
That's bad,
yeah, that kicked it all off because that shoulder already had a torn labrum to start with, and then once I separated the AC joint, then it flared everything else up, and then it went from that to like, AC joint kind of creeps into your neck, and so it was just like a mess. And
then you can't turn your head for a couple of days after training, kind of thing. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say that the cold plunges, sauna, like I cold plunged yesterday when I got home from training because I was pretty sore because my hip's jacked up right now. I don't know what I did to it. And then, did some stuff after my body warmed up on its own, got a shower or whatever. Then I jumped in the sauna for like 20 minutes. I need to
get a sauna. I got a hot tub. I need to get a sauna. I love doing ice baths, but I don't like doing them in the wintertime, man.
I just stuck mine in my garage so I could regulate it a little bit.
Yeah. I used to keep it in the basement during the winter, but now I just don't use it in the wintertime. Like summertime, I'll fucking hop in the coldest ice bath. I don't care. But
exactly.
When it's cold outside, it's tough. You know.
So, man, we've been chopping it up here for, getting close to an hour and 20 minutes. I want to be sensitive to your time. But I did want to ask you, I don't know what made me think of this. I was sitting on the couch before you and I started, and I was just watching videos of whatever. I don't remember what I was watching. It started making me think of, like, guilty pleasures, right? And so I want to know, last question, what is your guilty pleasure music that nobody knows about, but whenever no one's around, what do you listen to? That's like a guilty pleasure that you would like not want anybody to know. I'll tell you mine after. I'll tell you my two after you tell me yours.
Here's the problem. I listen to a lot of weird music, and I usually just put it on my playlist when I run class. But anybody who knows me knows that probably like I listen to some ICP, Insane Clown Posse.
Insane Clown Posse. Yeah, they're from Detroit, right?
Yeah. I'm a closet juggalo. That would be one of them probably. And then, I get weird, man.
Nice. I love it. So my two guilty pleasures are for music is Hall & Oates. That's
way different.
Hall & Oates. I will throw that on, like have a fire out like in the fire pit in the spring, summer, or fall, like outside in the evenings or whatever on a weekend, and like I always tell the wife, like, hey, throw some Hall & Oates on. I'll just sit and hang out and have a cigar and drink a beer, listen to Hall & Oates. And then the other one is a Seal.
Seal? Yeah.
Just because that dude's voice, man, like I'm just like, damn, that guy can sing. You know what I mean? So those are my two guilty pleasures. You know, I'm sure someone's gonna kill me for this later, but awesome, man. Before I let you get out of here, dude, I'm gonna let you go listen to some ICP, but let people know where they can follow along with you and check out what you have going on, like the rest of the duck season and next hunting season and stuff.
Yeah, I got 2 Instagrams, Stevie Starlight and Starlight Outdoors. Starlight Outdoors is kind of like I post a little bit more hunting stuff, and the other one is more of my jiu-jitsu stuff. Thinking about starting an outfitter. That's kind of why I started the Starlight Outdoors. Like one day that might transition into something. But another place you could find me is I am a frequent guest on the Time's Up Outdoors podcast. So they're a group of 4 Detroit firefighters. They're the guys that I kind of travel and hunt with a lot. I'm not officially part of their gang, but we do a lot of stuff together. So definitely check them out. So.
Awesome, man. Killer, buddy. I appreciate you coming on, dude, and hopefully one day I'll make my way to Michigan and we'll catch a roll.
Oh, definitely, man. Same.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening, and if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, we need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, and Genesee Beer. And until next time, we'll see y'all.